I'd like to call the Township North Huntington Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call, Manager Silcom.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
Commissioner Atwood.
Here.
Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Zona.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Goss.
Here.
Commissioner Haggis.
Here. Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. If any residents would like to speak tonight, they could sign the book at the podium. Thank you. Looks like we have one resident tonight. Josh, if you could just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then you can address the board.
Hi, my name is Joshua Watt. Address, right?
Yeah, address, please.
7278 Mansfield Lane.
All right, thank you.
What do I do?
Oh, whatever your concern is, or you came to talk to the board about.
We were here for
Yeah.
to follow up with the backyard chickens.
Okay, yeah.
And we'd like to also have ducks also included because they're considered part of the poultry
Fowl family.
fowl. And we've been researching them, and actually I called the township a couple times to talk to them about the zoning. So Josh has some reasons why he would like them considered also.
And Mom, if you could just identify yourself for the minutes as well.
My name's Tracy, T-R-A-C-Y, Watt, W-A-T-T, same address.
All right, go ahead.
I feel pet and ducks should be allowed as pets, and I have a few reasons why. My first reason is that they are flightless birds, so people don't have to worry about having to chase them down in the streets or neighbors complaining about them being in their yard. My second reason is that they are very quiet animals unless they are mad, sad, or stressed and uncomfortable. My third reason is also that they are not disruptive to neighbors in almost any way at all. That's all.
Anything else tonight?
No, thank you.
All right, I appreciate you for coming up and
right.
speaking to us.
Thanks.
Zach, I had one resident that asked if we could phone them in. It's up to you if you'd like to
Yeah,
do that.
that's fine.
Okay,
Yep.
try giving a call real fast. I know Commissioner Atwood, she spoke with you. She said you're going to try to Zoom her in, so we'll see if this works.
Hello.
Hi, Brenda. This is Brian Blasco. You are on the phone at the Board of Commissioners meeting. So I'm going to put you on speakerphone here, and you can speak.
Just, if you can, just tell her name and address.
Okay, and Brenda, could you just state your first and last name as well as your address, please?
Brenda Stein, 151 Falcon Ridge Drive, North Huntington, Pennsylvania, 15642.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, I was first diagnosed back in November of 2019 with a sinus infection. And I just kept getting worse and worse. But then with everything with this COVID, they shut down all the testing and everything. Once everything opened back up and I started to have the testing done, and I had CT scans done and MRIs done, it showed that I had a mass in my right maxillary sinus, but the mass was covered with a fungal infection. And the fungal infection was in my nasal cavity, around the mass, and they had to first remove the fungal infection before they could do anything about the mass. And then I saw several specialists in Pittsburgh. We even drove to Ohio. Nobody could figure out how I got this fungal infection. And then I sat down and I talked in length with one doctor from Allegheny General Hospital. And mention that we live next door to a bunch of chickens. And then that's when everything came together. Because this fungal infection only comes from a couple different things. So that's when it took them 3 weeks before I finally got clarification that it was definitely from the chickens. So I let the neighbors know that I was very sick and it was from their chickens. And they told me that they were only getting 2 eggs a week from the chicken anyhow, but the chickens were their daughter's pets and that they couldn't get rid of the chickens even though it was killing me. That they didn't even know if I would survive this upcoming surgery that I have to have again. But they just went on from the chickens. So yesterday, before I can have this next surgery done, they told me to be able to go back to an environment without backyard chickens living next to us. So on Monday, we signed a 1-year lease. I'm going to be living in an apartment all by myself while John remains here at the house until we can sell. Nobody wants to buy this house. Nobody wants to live next to a house and a housing plan next to backyard chickens that aren't even kept in a coop big enough for the chickens they have. I mean, you can't have chickens in a housing plan. And what this has caused us, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, I have never been this sick in my life. I've lost 48 pounds. I don't eat. I don't sleep at all. They basically on comfort makers right now. I just had a granddaughter that I don't even know. I'm 56 years old, and I'm going for surgery 27th this month, and they don't even think I'm going to survive the surgery. And I never expected to die at 56 for chickens. And I never thought I was going to be going through this at 56. I mean, our home is paid for. We thought we'd be living here until we die together. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional. But we don't bother our neighbors at all. We like to travel. I was so healthy. We were taking cruises. I've seen so many places I've never seen in my life. My whole life has changed. I haven't left this house. I can't go outside. All I do now is go from doctor to doctor, from procedure to procedure, surgery to surgery. And it's so hard on John because he's just watching me die. And I'd really like to hold my granddaughter. I have 4 children of my own. And I can't be around anybody. Because I can't get one more thing. If I would get one more thing, I'd be done. I just think that if somebody would come to me and tell me me that we had something that was going to cost their life, I would do anything in my power to help them. I could never let anybody go through this. I lived on a farm for 32 years before I moved here. And I do know the proper way to take care of chickens. And there is no possible way you can keep 5 chickens in a chicken coop the size that they have, with a tarp that was covering it 24 hours a day until 3 days ago, with no ventilation, no proper feeding station. And it was bound to happen to somebody. It just happened to me. Probably because we live right next door. And this isn't a rare thing that just anybody can get. This can happen to anybody. So if people all think that they're safe and this is a rare fungal infection, it isn't. You have to have more land than what they have next door if you want to have 5 chickens. You cannot raise chickens in a backyard. I mean, if you want to live off the land and you want to have chickens, you're putting not yourselves at risk, you're putting your neighbors at risk. And it's destroying my life. I don't even have a life. I've lost part of my vision now. The fungus has affected that. So I can't drive anymore. I have nothing to look forward to. I don't even FaceTime my granddaughter now because I can't see her. My son's only been home from the Army for 4 years now. And he just had his first daughter. And I really, really wanted to get to know her. And I just can't believe that this is happening to me over chickens. And I can't believe that people are fighting over they want chickens in their backyard. When there's plenty of land you can buy that's fit for chickens. I mean, buy a farm. Or go to a farm and buy farm eggs. I'll buy anybody all the farm eggs they want. I just don't see the need for people to want backyard chickens. This place, when we bought our home, this housing plan was never zoned for chickens. When it's zoned properly. When it says you need 10 to 15 acres, that's because you definitely need 10 to 15 acres for chickens. Chickens are one of the filthiest animals you want to even have on a farm. I mean, we had every animal you can name on our farm. And the chickens were the worst ones I could tell you you'd want. They were the ones that you had to always worry about. They caused all kinds of diseases. I mean, those were the ones that we took, extra caution with. I can't believe after living on a farm, I moved to a housing plan. I'm going through this. And I can't can't believe Monday we had to go and find me a new place to live. I never thought I would be dying alone. But somebody has to stay at the house. I can't stay here. I just don't know what this big crusade is about having backyard chickens. Unless you have a yard that's suitable for chickens.
Okay, Brenda, thank you. And the board has heard your comments, so we'll let you go. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Al, or Commissioner Atwood.
Okay, I'm sorry I got emotional.
That's okay. We appreciate your phone call.
Okay,
Thank you. You have a good afternoon.
you too. Thank you.
All right. No other citizens signed up to speak tonight. Yeah, traditionally you have to sign in, but go ahead. Just come up. Yeah, you're fine. Just come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
I'll raise this up a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My name's Tara Barron. My address is 780 Clay Pike. So about the backyard chickens. I feel for Brenda. I do, because I've been in a very similar situation. Last year, I actually underwent brain surgery because I had and still have a brain tumor. And I'm significantly younger than she is, so I've been there. I feel for her, I do. That said, what I can say is my husband and I actually left Allegheny County, where you're allowed to have chickens. We lived in an apartment, and we looked at Allegheny County guidelines where you're allowed to have chickens with just 2,000 square feet of property. You're allowed to have up to 5 chickens. When we were looking to purchase a house, we went, hey, Allegheny County, which is much more urban, but we wanted to get still, suburban, but a little bit more like, I don't want to say rural, but not as city-ish, just a little bit more laid back. But my husband wanted to see about having beehives. We wanted to see about having chickens. We wanted to have a nice garden where we'd grow vegetables as well as herbs. That was nothing big, but that's what we wanted for ourselves. And so to come and then find out that we weren't allowed to have chickens, we were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we moved to Westmoreland County and we don't get to have chickens. We could have them in Allegheny County. We literally moved 5 miles away from our apartment in White Oak to Westmoreland County, and we can't have chickens. And that was crazy to us. So oddly enough, when we were watching online, because COVID, and we saw the chicken ordinance was coming up, and we're like, oh wow, we need to come and see about this, because this is something that it would be amazing if we could have chickens, since that was one of the things that we were excited about when we moved here. And we've been fixing up our house. I mean, anyone who's familiar with Clay Pike has probably seen all the renovations on our house. But one of the things that we would like to do is be able to have a nice little chicken coop, nothing major, but just something for us to be able to keep a couple chickens, to be able to have eggs, to be able to have something a little bit more, a little bit more homey, a little bit more rural, a little bit more urban, be able to have our herb garden and vegetable garden, and be able to have a little bit of something for ourselves, that we're not so dependent on everything, especially when you look at things like what happened now, and you're going, okay, well, am I going to be able to get food when I go to the market? Oh, the price of eggs went up to $8. So yeah, it might be nice to actually be able to provide for yourself a little bit. So I think, it's something to consider. I know that Westmoreland County is trying to be a little bit more urban. I appreciate that, I do. But I think that if you're looking at some of the more urban areas, they allow chickens as well, so I don't think that would take away. And from the concept of making sure that they're cared for properly, for keeping a tarp for ages, obviously if you're having zoning, you're having permits that have to be renewed just like they would for dogs every year. They would have zoning boards that can come out. That could all be part of the plan to make sure that you're keeping an appropriate coop for them, that it's being maintained properly, that what you have is being taken care of so that nothing would happen that would be bad. And obviously, again, do you have the appropriate number of chickens? That's what all of this permitting that we'd be looking at would be for. So I think that's something to, that's what we're considering, right? So, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, response to citizens' input. I believe we had Josh come up and speak to us about possibly exploring the idea of having ducks as well.
Josh, I wanted to thank you for coming up and speaking, because at your age, there's no way I'd be able to do that. So that's very brave of you. Unfortunately, I'm going to be one of those hard guys to convince that chickens and ducks are pets, because I feel that we could really classify anything as a pet. We even have the pet rock if you want to go that far. But one of the concerns that I had, and I think Commissioner Haggis listed before, is, well, what's after chickens? And 1 week later, you already proved that point. Let's have ducks. And I'm not saying that you're an irresponsible young man. I'm sure that I see you have a baseball hat. It looks like you play some sports, so you know some commitment, some hard work. But I've seen too many kids as a teacher that they say they want to do something, and all of a sudden, that's a lot of work that I really don't want to do on a nice hot summer day. And I did follow the Yerkinson's advice. I reached out to 3 towns: North Versailles Township, Bethel Park, and Mount Lebanon. And North Versailles is actually voting on their chicken ordinance this evening. Bethel Park and Mount Lebanon said the biggest problems they've had have been with people getting too many chickens, whatever their limits are, they've exceeded those, and not getting the proper permits. So I still stand against. North Huntington is not an agricultural area. I would be open to larger parcels of land being able to have chickens, but not in a residential development. I hear the concerns that people are expressing over COVID, but I really don't see the threat. 100-year award, and I'm not sure what the Planning Commission came up with on the draft, but as Virginia, what you looked over, I have a long list of concerns that go along with that. And if you're going to tell me it's a $100 permit, I buy my eggs at the Lello's for 99 cents for extra large eggs. To build a chicken coop, I'm saying $200. I'm at $300. Got to build a fence around that pen, $400 or $500, plus feed, plus maintenance. Is there really the worth there compared to going to the farmer's market in downtown Irwin on Sunday to buy eggs? Is that chicken a pet, or is that a source of food? Or is it like a dog? A dog provides the benefits of security and safety. I get that, but I don't see chickens or ducks or roosters or anything outside the definition of pets. I mean, if anyone wants to keep it inside your house, put it in your bedroom with you, I'm not going to hold that against you. It's up for you to clean up your room, but I'm looking to protect the safety and the security of all the property holders in North Huntington. What's so hard is that we have such a diverse outlaying of properties. And there are people in my ward that have 2-3 acres that could very easily, including myself, have chickens, and no one would ever know they're there. I did go visit Brenda, who called in on our citizens' input here, and I did see firsthand the chicken coop and fencing around the Yerkinson's property. And is it something that's physically attractive to me? No, and that's everyone's perception of what they like. I don't know the chain link fence is necessarily what I want to see in my backyard. And I've told the Yerkinsons, I have neighbors at my family's cabin in Ligonier that it looks like Better Home and Gardens and Martha Stewart had fixed up this chicken coop. We still have issues. There's a black bear that came in we had to have a trap for. The chickens fly right over the fence. I know that they don't fly far, but they get right over the fence. They wander the neighborhoods. They bring in threats, and I just had a notification that we had a black bear sighting on Markview Manor. It's a concern for me. So, Josh, I appreciate you coming out, but I'll be very hard pressed. And when you have to go back to school, hopefully at some point in time, right? When you start doing your English papers and you have to start doing a persuasive argument, you have to have a lot of evidence to convince me that your chickens or ducks are really going to be an essential element to have here in North Huntington. But I really do appreciate you coming out here to talk with us tonight. Thank you.
Any other board comment or input on the residents that spoke tonight?
Yeah, I do. There is no doubt that there can't be anybody sitting here today or out in TV land that could hear Brenda Stein's story and not sympathize with her. what I'm about to say, I'm not doing for points. I hold myself accountable to God and God only. Man comes and goes. But I will definitely say this. I think, Brenda, if you're out there and you can hear us, we're going to be praying for you. Okay, there is no doubt about it. And we are sorry to hear what you're going through. And there is not going to be a however or a but that's the honest to God's truth. There's no doubt that everybody here feels terrible for you. I have received countless support for the chicken. Chickens typically go after ticks. Ticks carry Lyme's disease, which is punishing. My aunt now has a permanent heart pacemaker because of a tick. I know other people that have had ticks and wound up in the same situation. This might seem easy, it might seem cut and dry, but you know what? If we go further into this and this pandemic worsens and the fears that are being perpetrated and mongering, let's take it one step further and let's say, what happens if our whole society collapses this November after the election? There's a lot of chat rooms out there that are talking that the crap's going to hit the fan, no matter how this election goes. And the question is are we going to be prepared? Are we going to be able to survive? I think the chickens bring in self-reliance. I think it would be smart for Americans to become self-reliant. Government does not have the answer. Government is not the answer. Socialism is not the answer. I'm not going to get into a spiel about socialism, but you look at all the nations that succumbed to socialism. Adolf Hitler was a Nazi, a socialist. Mao Zedong, a socialist. Joseph Stalin, a socialist. Venezuela, third most richest nation in the world, in less than 19 years has embraced socialism. And they are one of the dirtiest, filthiest, crime-ridden, murder-ridden countries in the world. That's what you get when you get socialism. They're going to force you to rely on the government for your food. Government can control the people if they can control the food. That's where I see this could possibly go. I don't want to see anybody subject to a government that is going to suppress them, oppress them, rule over them, and if you speak out against them, one day you're going to wind up disappearing. Just like Stalin did with the gulags. Okay? Socialism, 95 million people gone, dead. Because the government decides that they're going to tell people how to live their life. We have to be very, very careful. It's chickens today, but only God knows what it's going to be tomorrow. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with socialism. I'm not going to have the government tell us what we can and cannot do every day of my life. And if I want to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, then I have a right to do that. And nobody's going to take that away from me. And you're not going to threaten my life and my family's life because that's what I want to do. I don't want anybody to be subject to such rules and such scrutiny, where you all behave yourselves and you act real kind and quiet and passive because you're afraid for your life that one day you're going to wake up and maybe you're going to disappear or find yourself in a re-education camp thanks to Pol Pot in Cambodia. Just look at all the skulls that he stacked up during the Vietnam War because people didn't agree with his politics, his socialism. I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to fight it every step of the way. Brenda, honest to God, if I could lay hands on you and heal you and ask God's Spirit and His to heal you, I would. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to come over, Brenda, tomorrow or Friday, and I would definitely like to pray over you. I believe in the power of prayer. But I also know I want people in America to be self-sufficient and not rely on things that governments is not the answer, to be feeding you hand and fist and into the grave you go. I am for the chickens. People need to be self-reliant, but I'm going to tell you something. If we approve this chicken ordinance, it'll be heavily scrutinized. There'll be ordinances. There has to be, you got to understand, folks, if we're going to pass this, you have to keep your area clean and safe and protected. You do. You cannot have unsightly places. You just cannot do it. It's not fair to your neighbors to smell that stuff. It's not fair for neighbors to come in and ruin the, what am I saying? The property value. It's just not going to work out for us if we allow such things to happen. So if we're going to go forward with this, there's going to be heavy ordinances. There's going to be rules and guidelines. And I'm going to tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, I will push for heavy fines if you don't apply. Because I don't want us messing up our beautiful community, but at the same time, I want you to have the right of pursuit, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, granted to us by our Constitution and our Founding Fathers. I believe in it. I fought for it in Iraq, and I'm going to live for it, and I'm going to die by it, because that's what I believe. So I want to thank everybody out there that's been saying thank you so much for the notes on the chickens and their support and stuff like that. But I'm also going to ask you all that are in favor of the chickens, please tonight, more importantly, let's gather up the family and say a prayer for Brenda Stein. And let's ask God to put a healing hand on her. So tomorrow morning when she wakes up, this pain isn't with her anymore. Believe in a power of prayer. I ask you to do that for Brenda, and I thank you all very, very much for listening.
Real fast to go on to that, Eric. I keep hearing about how the chickens eat ticks and bugs and other things, but from my understanding, they're confined to a fenced-in area, which is only a fragment or a percent of your yard. So if you have a 10,000 square foot yard and a 400 square foot coop with fenced enclosure, how much protection are those chickens really offering to you? Because when I approached the Yurkison's house the other day, the first thing I saw, and I laughed, believe me guys, I think it's cute. I have nothing against you personally. Saw a chicken scurrying across the yard, out of its pen, out of its fence. And, for me, it was funny. The same thing was as funny when I heard the rooster for the first time, and I've been hearing this rooster for 6-8 weeks, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., eating dinner today. Eric, you mentioned how do we make people keep this safe? I don't know how to enforce that. We have a fireworks ordinance. We have a state law on fireworks, and people were shooting them right over my house, and I'm worried about, am I going to get hit with a firework? We have speed limits. People don't follow their speed limits. We have all these issues in the township. Why we would open ourselves up to more issues and litigation, which it's not if, it's when. That's really the issue that I have. And I have nothing against any of you individually, but when we start to discuss this ordinance, I'm going to tear this thing apart, because there's no way what we have drafted, and I'm open-minded. Again, we have a 1-3 acre minimum. I'm open to that. But what we have in saying, hey, I'm going to put 5 chickens on a 1/4 acre lot, but it doesn't apply to towns or neighborhoods with covenants, how is that even fair to those residents on either side? You're saying because I live in one area, I can or cannot have chickens?
Well, what about the health aspect of it?
I get.
I don't know what kind of chicken eggs I'm getting when I go to the grocery store. I don't know what pesticides the farmer's been using. I don't know what kind of feed he's been using. I don't know where he's getting it. But if I can control that, and I can control that going into my mouth and going into the bodies and into my digestive system that puts out into healthy cells, I'm going to choose the healthy body. And I can't guarantee you the other boys and girls out there that are fostering and building these egg factories are going to do the same thing. Because for us, individually, it's not about the dollar. It's about maybe the health and benefit of that chicken that we're raising and not feeding a big corporation that really doesn't give a crap about us.
Yeah.
But they do it for the bottom line is for the bottom dollar.
And I am trying
Lots
to keep,
of arguments.
Trying to keep as an open mind as I can.
Me too.
I posted a Facebook survey. I tried to keep it as unbiased as I possibly could, which isn't easy. I mean, believe me, as a statistics guy, however make you create a survey, there's some bias to it. I did have probably 80% support for the chickens. It was much higher than I thought. But I also feel in the philosophy is that what's right isn't always popular, and what's popular isn't always right. So I have to really evaluate that, and I just don't see the need for this. And then we'll wait for the people that want their llamas and goats to come up next, and that's my concern. So are these pets or are these livestock?
And I agree with you, and we're drawing a line. Absolutely. The line's even being drawn right now, even over the chicken things.
We drew the line when we drew the ordinance that said no chickens. That's when we drew the line.
And that's up for
Ron,
review.
do you want to add something in?
Yeah, I wanted to say a few things real quick. And I see the point about raising something that you know is pesticide free and all that. And again, right up front, I'm on the fence on this. I'm still on the fence. I haven't decided one way or another. that's great if that's all you're eating is eggs. I'm sure we're all going to the store and buying meat, and we're buying everything else out of the store. So, I mean, if you're relying on healthy eggs to keep you safe, I don't think that's quite an issue. Another thing I wanted to bring up that in all of these discussions the last few months, I don't think we've even addressed it, is what the cost is going to be to the township for this. Okay, now even if we charge $100 per permit, per person, per year, whatever, who's going to, I mean, we're going to enforce this ordinance how? Who knows enough about chickens in the township that's going to come out and inspect the chicken coop, say whether it's proper, say whether the chickens are who is going to do that? Are we going to have to hire somebody, a chicken expert or a poultry expert? We're going to have to train them in what's right, what's proper with chickens. I mean, this is going to be a huge expense on the township. And then when we do come out and we do inspect it, if we find chickens that we believe are sick, what do? We call the vet in. We're going to have to, right? We can't let chickens suffer. I mean, the same thing with dogs. When a dog's loose and gets hit by a car, we take it to a vet. I just think it's going to be a huge cost to the township, and nobody has addressed it. I don't think this $100 fee or whatever we charge is going to be enough to even cover a percentage of it. And again, my main thing is we're going to be tough with this enforcement, but who? I don't think we have anybody in this township hired right now that's a chicken expert that can go out and inspect coops and inspect chickens. And so I think that's an issue too that we've felt. I haven't heard anybody discuss it. And I'm on the fence. I've been doing research. I've been reading everything you guys email, reading stuff online. I've been doing my own research, and that's an issue that I think is a big issue, and it's a big issue with me. So.
And I feel the same way. What happens when residents have chickens they're not supposed to have and we go to confiscate or remove those chickens? We're in a lawsuit right now because of trees, inanimate object. That's my constitutional right. Again, it's going to happen. It's going to be litigation against the township, and who's paying for it? You, the taxpayers. We're trying to keep your taxes down as low as we can. I don't see the reward for this. And I think it's a great concept. I love your ideas. I don't think it's practical by any means.
If I could weigh in here, I think I also express, my sympathy for Brenda. But there's a number of different ways to obtain fungal infections. And I would like to see a little bit more information from her as to, did they specifically say that this came from chickens, or could it have come from a number of other things? So, that to me, I think is a critical factor. As far as the ordinance and how you enforce it, you have a permit fee that requires the neighbors to all agree that those chickens are there. And then the process is complaint driven. If you get a complaint, then somebody can go out and find somebody for the conditions that you put specifically in the ordinance. You have specific requirements in that ordinance, and they're black and white. So there should be no gray area. And you initially you charge the fees as to what it's going to cost the township to do the enforcement. So if it costs somebody $100 to review an application, that's what you charge. If it costs somebody $200 to review an application, that's what you charge. Same with the penalties and the fines. If it's going to cost you a lot of money to enforce, then you charge a large fine on the flip side. So I think if the ordinance is written correctly and it is written specifically, we are actually going to have more of an ability to enforce than what we have right now with no ordinance.
I don't feel, again, I agree with you, Virginia, that I'm not blaming the Yerkinsons for the health condition. That's up to doctors. That's way out of our control here. When I looked at some of the ordinances for Bethel Park and Mount Lebanon, I had meant to share it. They were very simple. I mean, what you had sent out, it's pretty substantial. And I think sometimes more is worse. And I learned that these guys can tell you that I tried to push for a noise ordinance and they tore me apart on it. This just does not make any sense to me. If you're charging $200 for a fee, Aldi's has their cage-free eggs $2.50 a dozen.
Well,
I mean,
there's a difference between an organic.
I
egg
understand, and there's so much deliberation
store.
between all the descriptions, what's natural, organic, holistic. I mean, it's just, this is opening up a can of worms that is going to set the township back. I mean, the one part in this ordinance says the height of the hen house or tractor cannot exceed the height of the residence. If I have a 2-story house, you're saying I can build a 20-foot hen house in my backyard? I mean, I think Jeff or Craig can speak for this, to do an additional structure, it's either 14 or 16 feet, but we're going to say you can build a 20-foot hen house?
Well, this is why we sent it back to the planning.
I understand, and I know it's a working document. I totally get that. But I just do not see the benefits of this, and I am still completely open. But as far as saying, hey, I'm going to go into a residential neighborhood and put chickens in, it's probably not going to happen in my mind. An acre, 2, 3 acres, yeah, we could probably work with that, but, you know, I don't have the facts behind me, the evidence to say it's worthwhile.
Fran, you want to add something?
Yes, I do. I respect all of your positions on this chicken issue, first of all. And Josh, good for you for coming up and telling us that you would like chicken very much, or any other poultry. And, you know, beside the fact that Brian's a teacher and he's seeing, you know, these kids who want these responsibilities and then they don't take it on, I say that's what parents are for. It's not up to the teacher to make sure these kids are responsible. I believe that the parents should see that the children are responsible. If they want chicken, make sure they're responsible taking care of chicken. I know my kids had multitudes of pets in their day. But I also wanted to address Brenda a little bit. I don't know whether she's still on board or not, but I am a medical technologist. I worked in microbiology for over 25 years, and I worked with all of these fungal infections. I feel really bad that Brenda has this really bad infection. It sounds like it's systemic at this point. And why she wasn't treated at the get-go, there's only 2 drugs that treat fungal infections. One of them is amphotericin B, and there are only 2 drugs for fungal infections, and those are the ones that the physicians prescribe. It doesn't matter what the fungus is. Now, there are 2 possibilities for her, and my guess would be coccidioides or histoplasmosis. And either of these you cannot directly attribute to chicken because they are, histoplasmosis is present in the soil everywhere. And coccidioides, she said she was in the Ohio Valley. That's a great place to get this organism, is the Ohio Valley, the Ohio River Valley. And so there's a lot of things in there that we can't say that the chicken were the absolute cause of her problems. And I do believe that Penn State, Virginia, do they come in? I think they're willing to help with things like this, with chicken and
Yes,
farming issues.
Penn State has some guidelines that can be used. And I'm sure that some of these other municipalities that have passed these ordinances have used Penn State's guidelines.
Yes. So anyway, I just don't see that there should be a direct correlation between the chickens and her disease, because her disease she could have contracted in a multitude of other ways. And at this point, I think that she's probably looking at a very compromised immune system as well, and that's why these organisms has kind of taken over. But I feel bad for her, but I also feel that we need a strong ordinance. If we're going to allow chicken, we need to have a strong ordinance, and we also need to have control over that ordinance. Right. And that's just my 2 cents.
And I agree with you, Fran. We're not blaming the Yerkesons on her medical conditions. At least I'm not. Yeah, we have no evidence behind that, so not.
I know, but I think it was Alder Wendell Holmes, and maybe the attorney could correct me on this, that said sad cases make bad law. And I think that we can't make laws, policies, or anything on hard cases.
And I think what's difficult here, though, is I like the idea of more doing a permit application compared to just saying it's open, free range for everybody. But from what I understand, there's 2 people appealing the Yerkinson's chickens that they wouldn't be able to keep their chickens or get new chickens because they don't want them. They're in adjoining properties. So by this, either way, they're going to lose their chickens.
And also with their covenants too.
Correct.
Josh, I'm proud of you coming up to speak tonight. I think, like Brian said, I was concerned from the get-go with this. I've been through this. This is my second go-around with the chickens. Where does it stop? I don't think the township should be the one to pick winners and losers. So we just say there's no backyard animals, farm animals. That's a easy, clean way. If we say there's chickens, and I have a hard time telling you, why can't you have a duck? Or there's other type of ducks, animals, they're small. Or what if someone wants to have a goat for goat milk or sheep or different kind of animals? You got to draw the line somewhere, and I think if we start saying one animal is okay and the other ones aren't, you're picking winners and losers. I think that's a very gray area. People talked about, different reasons why maybe the chickens might be bad. The resident called up, talked about some of the issues she maybe had with the chickens, not saying that was factual, but she is having some issues she's going with. They do bring bacterial diseases, salmonella, bird flu. And then you got other reasons it attracts predators. And I think someone mentioned about, bear sightings. I'm not saying that's any correlation. It just could be a one-off, but it's possible they do attract predators. And then they attract rodents as well. They come for the feed that the chickens are eating. Other nuisance, like Brian said, it's bound to happen. I know it happens with other animals, but they get away. You're going to have to try to get the chickens if they get outside the coop or whatnot. Flies are attracted to the area generally with the droppings from the birds and other animals, and then the smell. And I think what I have more of a concern with is kind of echoing what Ron said, is the policing of this. We don't have a chicken expert on staff, so we're going to need to go get them training if it's at the University of Penn State or where else. And then a lot of that is gray area, and not beating up what you sent out. I appreciate all your hard work in the ordinance. But you say the chicken coop, is it aesthetically pleasing? Who's the decider on that? You're going to say, should it be the same material as a housing structure? Should it be sided the same way? There's a lot of gray areas with that. Like I said, you did a lot of work on that rough draft, and I appreciate you doing that. And like you said, Brian, the Provable property owners. Going on a different subject, like you said about the fireworks, I got numerous complaints about fireworks, and I asked the residents, well, did you call into the police department to report the issue? Well, no, I don't want to have a conflict with my neighbor. I think we're going to be asking for a large group of neighbor conflicts by doing this, because residents don't want to be named against you, just like I don't want to say, hey, you know what, neighbor, I'm glad that you're getting a chicken, but I might have been the person that called and said, you know what, I have an issue with that, because I don't want to tell you to your face I have an issue with your chickens in your backyard. So I think that's going to create a conflict there. I think with what you said about the covenants is an issue too. You're kind of picking and choosing losers there. So if I live in a neighborhood without a covenants and someone does, I'm saying that, their covenants is going to outlaw the law that they're allowed to have the chickens, which is going to get into a gray area. We'll probably end up with a magistrate over that as well. I'm proud that people are exploring the options. When this was a hot topic years ago, we had all the chairs in the room without obviously a separation or social distancing, and there was probably obviously at least twice the amount of people in the room, and it was a larger group of people that are adamantly supportive of it. I know there was a lot of people emailing us, I think because of Brian may put out a survey online, which I greatly appreciate, but I did get a large majority of people that are actually against it as well. And when you have a topic like this, generally, just from my experience in the past, the people that are in support of it are going to be very vocal about it. But a majority of people, more than likely, are not in favor, but it's not on their radar yet because it's not actually passed. There's an old saying, it's not in my backyard for local government, and no one's going to cause a big fuss unless it happens in their neighbor's backyard, and they're going to be calling us saying, why is there a chicken in my neighbor's backyard now? Which obviously has happened. Moving forward, this has been sent back to the Planning Commission for further review. Hopefully, they might have something back to us maybe by next month, where the board could take further action or deliberate on whatever policy is put forward to us. So that's where we stand at now, moving forward with the chicken ordinance. If there's any other board comment, yeah, you're on.
Just one last thing, and I know it, something we had discussed or in the draft is that you have to get all your neighbors' approval. So I get chickens and get my neighbor's approval, but what happens when one of those neighbors move and another one comes in and decides, you know what, I don't want you to have chickens after I've had them for 5 years and they're my pets, then what do I do? I thought of that too. That's something that came up when I was thinking about it. And like Commissioner Haggis said too, say 4 of your neighbors approve it and I say, no, I don't want you to have chickens. And then you're not able to get them because of me. I'm the outcast and probably none of the neighbors are going to talk to me anymore. And they're going to be mad at me, and then I'm in trouble in that neighborhood. So I just think that's a few things to look at too.
I just want to add one other thing. It's the buyer's responsibility and owner's responsibility to know what is permitted in their municipality. And so when you go to buy something, if you think you're going to be able to have chickens, you should research that. It's really not the township's responsibility to go out and tell people. They should be researching that. And those protective covenants that are in most upscale housing subdivisions, they rank over what is required by our law here. It's super zoning.
Virginia, I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be a blanket thing. That we're going to blanket the whole community with everybody's allowed to have chickens, la-di-da-di everybody. And that's not the case, just like Craig was saying. It's called a Craig? Super zoning. The covenant takes precedence. Case in point, you got $500,000 homes that are clearly in their covenants sell you. When you move in here, you have to do this, this, and this, and that. And that's part of the privilege and or the disadvantage of moving into this community.
So
take it or leave it. So what I want everybody to know is, you know, this is not a blanket statement. This is not a cure-all. This is not the panacea. If we say yes, we're not overriding any covenants that are in there, like Mr. Schuster has got some really big, beautiful homes. A lot of those are $500,000 and more. And I'm sure there's a covenant in there that says, hey, kids, you're not going to have sheds, or hey, you're not going to have animals, and we're not going to supersede what covenant, according to what Mr. Craig says, and that's absolutely true. So I want everybody to leave here somewhat better educated than when we talk about these things, because I think the thing that hurts a lot of people get so wrapped up into their emotions, they lose the facts. And I think going back to what Fran said, what did Oliver Wendell Holmes say again? Please say it again. What did he say? Sad stories?
Hard cases make bad law.
Yeah.
So my question then goes to the board is, am I being punished for buying a house that I could afford, that I paid off in 3 years, because I made a financially responsible decision rather than buying a Schuster plan, which I could have been approved for a mortgage? I'm being punished now because I lived responsibly? So Fran, I understand that you live in a neighborhood with covenants. My brother, who is your neighbor, he said, hey, if the chickens are coming, I'm going to get them. And I know you still have the covenants. He's had pigs. He's had dogs. He's a good guy. But, hey, he has 2 kids. Let's learn about chickens. Who's going to take him to court? Are you going to take that financial money out of your pocket and pay it yourself? Because the developer's not going to. They have your money. They're happy. I mean, it's a realistic honesty. So why can't he have them, though? He pays his taxes in North Huntington. Legally, why can't he, besides being a good neighbor, why then can't he have them? I understand the covenants there, but...
I don't think it would be difficult to enforce the covenants.
But who's going to enforce that?
You just go to the magistrate first of all.
Who's going to the magistrate?
It's probably settled there.
But who's going to the magistrate?
Any homeowner that lives in a subdivision.
So they have to be
take a neighbor to
correct.
court
So they have to be
civilly.
inconvenienced, take a day off of work, unpaid, maybe hire an attorney to go do what.
But then you're inconveniencing people that want the chickens.
Hey,
it's almost a damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Absolutely. So I think it's a path just best not crossed.
Monetarily, somebody that violates their protective covenants, which are in the deed, the protective covenants are in the deed, they can't be changed by the township. So if somebody violates those protective covenants, any one of those homeowners can take that person to court and win a monetary judgment in court. And if that person doesn't pay, then that is a lien against the property. And the same with the township. If they go to cite somebody and they're being cited per day, a $500 fee per day or a $1,000 fee per day, that adds up and can be put as a lien on somebody's property.
So as that Ron said, then you have a great relationship with that neighbor now, correct?
Well, it's not the township's responsibility to make sure you have a great neighbor, but it is the neighbor's responsibility to try to create good relationships.
But now
with
you're
their
pitting
neighbors and
neighbor
be
against
honest
neighbor.
and upfront.
And that's the same situation. I have a next door neighbor. He is a great Christian, great neighbor. He said, hey, I want to build a garage 2 feet off of your property line. I had to come up and fight against him in front of the zoning hearing board. It made tensions rough for 2 years. I mean, not something I wanted to happen, but came across that situation. I want to protect my property. Again, I just see this as a discrimination issue. Why are you saying that I'm not being protected just because I don't live in an affluent community or affluent neighborhood?
Well, keep in mind, the way the draft is, every one of your neighbors that adjoins your property has to sign a letter saying that they're in favor of you having chickens.
And
if we make that every 5 years, that should cover any cycle of ownership.
But let's be
Is
honest.
that anonymous too? And then
Yeah.
I think if we were to move forward with this, I would kind of agree with Brian that we as a municipality shouldn't even have any dealings with the covenants. If that's, you're going to truly let that up to the neighbors and the people that live in that neighborhood, that's for them to deal with. It shouldn't have any dealings with the township. If we have a policy set in place to allow chickens, then we allow them. Then if the neighborhood has a policy or ordinance in place in their own neighborhood that would not allow them, that's up to them to fight that battle. We shouldn't have a say in that dealing from the get-go.
We can't, as a municipality, we can't enforce somebody's covenants, protective covenants.
Exactly what I'm saying.
That's a civil matter. It's
Yeah, that's
not
exactly
ours.
what I'm saying. So it shouldn't be into the policy in the first place, in my opinion. If you move forward with it, which I'm opposed to, but if you were to move forward with it, it shouldn't even be in there.
And then, Virginia, do you think the neighbors have to have these notarized to say, hey, it's not just I forward someone's signature. Is this a notarized signature to show that it's legal? Or are you having your neighbors go to a notary and signing off saying that we approve this? I mean, how are we protecting ourselves legally there?
I think that's up to the planning commission to fine tune that, to fine tune what the requirements are going to be.
How about the ordinance also maybe say that we review this in 10 years, and if this thing goes south between now and the next 10 years, we go do away with it?
We can review it at any time. That's not the question. It's just, even
There's some, my point is, there has got to be some give and take. This is turning into the folks that have and the folks that don't, the folks that want and the folks that don't. And if we do nothing, then the folks that don't win. If we do, then the folks that have, they win. So we're calling compromise. And compromise is both parties come together, the do's and the don'ts. And you know what? There's something in the middle. And in a compromise, we all know that nobody goes away 100% happy. And you live with it for the time being. And then you readdress it in 3 to 5 or 10 years from now. And then you come up with another ordinance and said, look, thought we were going in the right direction. Didn't work out the way that we wanted to. We got to squash it. We're going to reverse our agreement on the ordinance and go back.
we have a young man that has his hand up, and if he's in my classroom, he's probably shouting out. So I'm going to ask if we could allow him to speak.
Yeah, Josh.
If you have to go to the bathroom, go ahead.
Typically, Josh, we don't let people come back up, but since you came up to speak tonight, we're going to let you speak again.
I would like to speak on the rodents, of saying that chickens can bring rodents and predators. I think dogs and like other pets can also bring just as many predators and rodents as chickens can. I think it's like the fact that people don't see chickens as indoor pets and that dogs don't bring rodents. I think people think that, but I know dogs can bring as many rodents and predators as chickens can.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Josh, let me say this, man. I am so proud that you live in our community. You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
And I want to say, after talking to the officials at North Versailles, their whole chicken ordinance started with a Girl Scouts project as well. So same thing. It's nice to see involvement from people your age. So we do appreciate that. And again, Eric's saying, how can we make this fair? I mean, the only way I could really logically see this is property size. If you have a large enough property that it's farm-like, in my opinion, then okay. But again, I told you guys the story. I was at Round Hill Farm last week. I know it's a farm, but 95 degrees in heat. Let me tell you how pleasurable that smelled around those chicken coops.
I know there's a lot of opinions on this, but if the board's okay, we can maybe debate this at a later date when we have a proposed ordinance in front of us, and I'm sure we'll have another heated discussion about what's in front of us at that point in time, if that's okay.
Well, I'm going to be giving this ordinance to the planning committee for them to review as well. It's not my ordinance. This was drawn up by a resident of the township last time we went through the chicken thing. I was not I wasn't on the board then. However, he did contact me and he sent me this information. And he has section 7 as violations and penalties, and I'll just read the last one. In addition to fines and imprisonment, any person who does not maintain a clean and safe environment or whose hens become a nuisance to their neighbors may be subject to having their hens seized by the township following 3 registered or documented written warnings of violation. If the township seizes the birds and does not have another option but to have the birds euthanized, the fee associated with having the birds euthanized shall be at the poultry owner's expense.
All right, thank you.
I just have one more thing. Who decides if it's a nuisance? I mean, you can get, again, that thing can be picked. Who decides if it's a nuisance? Me? Or our poultry inspector that we're going to have to hire, or the neighbor, or the owner? Just throwing that out there.
Hey, for the record, let it be noted that we're not talking about roosters. We've all agreed.
Right.
Absolutely, positively, no roosters. We don't want the sound.
That's in here.
Absolutely. So just everybody
like
knows.
Prego, it's in here.
Right. We're talking hens, female only, and maybe somebody's going to charge me with discrimination because I said that. So whatever.
All right, like I said, if that's it for tonight, we'll discuss it further when we have an ordinance in front of us, and we can have a lengthy debate at that time. All right, moving on, approval of meetings minutes for the special meeting 6/11/20.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. For the regular meeting 6/17/2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Payment of bills.
Make a motion, we pay vouchers $6,854 through vouchers $6,919.
I second that.
Discussion. I actually have one question, Manager Silka. Voucher number 6912 for the 2020 Dodge Ram. Only reason I'm questioning this because that's a pretty big capital expenditure. I know was in the capital improvement plan, but I didn't know if that was one that we were going to try to put on hold due to our kind of adjusted budget.
Because of the lead time on vehicles, they were requisitioned and approved in January.
Okay, I was just checking. All right, any other discussion? All in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Staff reports, Public Works report, Director Albert. Anything to add to your report tonight?
Nothing else to add.
Any questions?
Rich, just to say thank you for that quick response on Oakhurst Drive. Not once, but twice, so thank you.
And I wanted to thank you too, Rich, for your quick response on the driveway, the pavement issue there too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Park and Recreations report, Director Miller. Anything for Director Miller tonight?
He's actually off on
Okay.
medical leave tonight.
Okay. Anything to get back to Director Miller? All right. Police report, Chief Rizzo. Nothing to add. Any questions for the chief tonight? All right, I don't believe Gene Commodore's here. Any questions to get back to Gene? Let Manager Silken know. Plan and engineering reports. Director Fonzie, I believe we have 3 things on for tonight.
Yes, there are 3 items in front of you tonight, but first you need to have a motion to add these to the agenda because the agenda was posted inadvertently without these 3 items on it.
All right, if you don't mind, you just want to read the titles and then we can add those.
Yeah, 3 items. The first one is S6 2020, the Tuscan Hills 3 easement relocation, S7 2020, Tuscan Hills Phase 4, and SP 5 2020, the Somerset Trust ATM.
Okay, I have a motion to add those to agenda.
I make a motion that we add S6 2020, S7 2020, and SP 520 to tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Any board discussion? This time we could take any residents' input since it was added to the agenda. I'm not seeing any. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right.
Okay, requesting action to approve S6 2020, Tuscan Hills 3 easement relocation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Requesting action to approve S7 2020, Tuscan Hills Phase 4.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
And lastly, item SP 5 2020, the Somerset Trust ATM kiosk.
Second it.
Discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment on that, I think the way that the entrance to this particular kiosk is proposed, that I think there might be some safety issues with it.
Virginia, if I could address that really quickly. This afternoon, I received the auto turn diagram from the applicant showing an AASHTO category, I forget the number, but it's essentially a passenger car, SUV, pickup truck type vehicle. And it seems that it navigates the site properly. So I sent that off to Dawn Housley to take a look at, but in my mind, it seemed to work. So I can share that with you also if you'd like to see that tomorrow or...
As long as it is safe, because that was my big concern.
Any other board discussion?
Virginia, what was the safety issue that you were concerned about?
Well, when you turned off of Route 30 into this area, you turned off of Route 30 and then you had to make a 90-degree bend turn on the road. So to me, I thought even a car is going to have to really come almost to a stop to make that hard turn to the right. And the way I looked at it, it actually could have been designed a little bit better to avoid that. And I've seen other areas on Route 30 where there's been a stacking situation and people come up on somebody and can rear end them. So that was my concern with it.
Could we mitigate that by widening the mouth of the entrance? Rather than, you're talking the 90, maybe open it up more to like a funnel?
Well, you can't widen it because of what they own as far as...
Yeah.
It's a private drive, so there's
Sure.
a lowered curb, a curb cut existing, and as a property owner, the parent company is not, you're not allowed to adjust the curb cut on that private drive.
So is the curb set at 90 degrees? Is it like that?
I don't know the exact radius, but it's...
And the reason why I'm asking, of course, if that curb was instead of this, and about being 4 inches high, what happens if it was laid at a 45
Oh, it
degree
is.
angle?
It's a depressed curb.
It is a
Yeah,
depressed curb.
it's a depressed curb,
Okay.
but there's a grade down to flat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I think the problem with that site was that there was a limit as far as the entrance to the driveway.
Okay.
And it wasn't where a lot of times when you pull into a driveway, there's kind of a gradual gradual turn with it. This was just a 90-degree
90.
turn.
Yeah, it is tough.
A tire killer too, I might add.
Yeah.
Ryan, I have a question too. Isn't that the same opening though, in the same driveway that was utilized for that business that was there for all those years?
Kirkade Auto Sales
Yeah.
was run out of that lot as well.
Right.
And it was the same.
Same
The
curb
entrance was
situation.
the same to it, right? And there was
Correct.
never an issue then with cars getting in and out.
Correct.
there.
Well, not to our knowledge. Like,
Right.
we didn't get any complaints or anything.
Okay.
Any other board discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved, 7-0.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the fire officials report? All right. Solicitor's report, Solicitor Alexander.
Thank you. There are 2 action items on the solicitor's report for this month. The first one is action to adopt proposed ordinance number 3 of 2020 for the Township of North Huntington, County of Westmoreland, amending ordinance number 443, authorizing the placement of a no left turn for trucks over 20 feet from Broadway Avenue to First Street, from Broadway Avenue to Second Street, and from Broadway Avenue to Third Street.
Motion to approve?
Second,
Discussion. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
The next item is action to adopt proposed ordinance number 4 of 2020 for the Township of North Huntington, County of Allegheny, County of Westmoreland, amending ordinance number 443, authorizing the placement of no left turn for trucks over 20 feet from the First Street to Park Street.
motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
And that concludes the solicitor's report for this month.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Township Manager's report, Manager Silka.
Okay, thank you, President. First is action to approve the June check register.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved, 7-0.
Second, in the budget report for June 2020 is provided for your review. And my final item is action to authorize a letter to local legislatures seeking local control of consumer fireworks.
Motion to authorize the letter.
Second.
Discussion. Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll just ask you to read this just so people understand what we're sending out.
Sure. North Huntington Township Board of Commissioners at the regular meeting of July 15th, 2020 took action to authorize a letter be sent to our state senator and representative in regard to local regulation of consumer fireworks. Act 43 of 2017 expanded the sale and use of fireworks in Pennsylvania to consumer fireworks. These fireworks have an aerial and explosive element compared to ground fireworks for sale prior to Act 43. Since enactment, public safety personnel have reported a significant increase in fireworks-related incidents and injuries, as well as significant constituent complaints. Furthermore, Act 43 preempts local regulation via municipal ordinance. The Pennsylvania Senate adopted an amendment to Senate Bill 932 that allows 9 highly populated communities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, Allentown, Erie, Reading, Bethlehem, Lancaster, and Bensalem Township, to prohibit consumer fireworks within their borders. Should the General Assembly adopt this amendment, it would do a disservice to all other municipalities by discriminating against those who are not provided the same opportunity to locally address fireworks. The expansion of the use of consumer fireworks to the general public is dangerous and very often illegal. Communities and first responders are paying the price for this state-sanctioned expansion. The approximate $10 million in state tax revenue is not worth the cost of the property and lives lost since 2017. Nor is it worth the degradation in the quality of life experienced by so many Pennsylvanians through the summer months. Local government officials serve on the front line of the fireworks issue and receive their constituents' feedback. Providing those same officials the ability to locally legislate consumer fireworks is the logical option. If the General Assembly is not willing to repeal the 2017 law in its entirety, each municipality must be given the option to, 1, locally opt out of Act 43 of 2017 and not allow the sale and use of consumer fireworks within the boundaries of the municipality. 2, locally opt out of Act 43 of 2017 and adopt a local ordinance to regulate consumer fireworks, which may be more restrictive than the provisions of Act 43 of 2017. I thank you on behalf of the Board of Commissioners of North Huntington Township for your attention to these matters. Do not hesitate to contact us should you have any questions.
All right, thanks, Jeff, for reading that. Any other board discussions? All in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Any further board comments?
Just like to ask the residents to reach out to Governor Wolf's office to address whatever new sanctions and regulations he's putting out that change day to day, week to week, and I think everyone's so confused about what's happening at this point in time, but just let the legislator do their job.
I would also like to discuss North Huntington possibly offering up to the local restaurants for the rest of the summer or until we have an end to this COVID-19 thing, that we do not enforce our parking lot ordinance unless there is some sort of a safety issue to allow that maybe some of these restaurants can use some of their parking spaces for outdoor seating, because it seems like outdoor seating is the way to go. Cities like Harrisburg have shut down entire streets. We don't have a main street to shut down other than Route 30, and we can't shut that down. So I would like to see that maybe we just not enforce our parking spaces ordinance, and allow the restaurants to put out tables into a couple spaces if they feel that would help their business.
I feel that your intentions are well intended and you want the businesses to thrive and prosper, but I think that just opens up too many potentials for cars driving through. I don't think most properties or restaurants in North Huntington own their own properties, so they're then going through their landowners. Who knows how long it's going to go on? I just think that's another legal risk there for the township. And I know your intentions are good, and I'd love to see these businesses thrive, but unfortunately, I feel it's a dangerous path to go down.
I don't think we need to actually do anything. If business owners want to set up a tent in their parking lot, I don't think, since I've been on the board, we've cited anyone about parking space issues. So if there's a business out there that wants to put a big tent in their parking lot and take up 10 spots and set up dining, more power to them. I don't think we're going to have any issues with that. I don't think we need to state anything as far as the ordinance that we're not going to follow for a certain period of time. I would encourage businesses to do it, and obviously, like Brian said, if they do it, make sure they do it safely. If possible, try to keep it close to the structure. But I don't think we need to state anything that we're not going to enforce, because I never seen us have an issue with that in the past, and I wouldn't see it in the future.
You see it all the time, people doing that right now, and I still think that if that occurs, they probably have to contact the Liquor Control Board and get an extension of services permit to be able to serve alcohol outside if they are operating in their parking lot.
Any other board discussion on parking lot restaurant space usage?
Just for the record, I agree with Virginia. Sorry, Brian. I don't want to see people lose their businesses. I don't want to see workers find themselves out of work.
And I saw the Nora and Sienna put up a tent a few weeks ago. I've never seen anyone sitting under it.
Yeah.
But if they want to pull their tents out or their tables to the sidewalks, go for it. But
All right. Anything else? Just need one motion.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
Discussion. All those in favor by saying an aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Meeting adjourned at 8:18.